Hi, this feels like a tricky video for me to record, but it feels pertinent to do so because it's all about grief and alchemizing grief into gratitude and into glory. And if you are watching this video, it's likely that you or someone that you know is dealing with grief, or at least endeavoring to deal with grief. And so this is something to support. Grief has touched my life twice now, and two very different experiences, which have highlighted to me the spectrum that grief can take when it touches us. And so this last year, I have been very much in avoidance with dealing with my grief. Yesterday, the 29th of September, marked the 1-year anniversary of the loss of our pregnancy. My partner, Tiffany, and I were pregnant, and then we weren't. And this last year has been infinitely challenging in a myriad of ways, and it was highlighted to me by my dad that I hadn't properly processed this grief. I've been so distracted with the challenges of life that I hadn't allowed myself to fully go through that process, to acknowledge and appreciate all of the energy that was stuck within me and impacting how I was living my life and the efficacy that I was able to do that with. And so what I did was I consciously went through the 5 stages, and I have created an alchemizing grief into grace guidebook, a journey of love after loss, which combines storytelling. I synthesized a short story about a character named Prem and his journey through the 5 stages to meet his beloved Priya, excuse me. And it's designed to be read so that it inspires the alchemy that is necessary to transmute the pain of grief. So the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Not easy to navigate, especially alone. And so this is why I created this guide. So if you are dealing with grief, whether it be the loss of a pregnancy, the loss of a loved one, the loss of yourself after the ending of a relationship, whatever grief story you're navigating, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that it is possible to alchemize. And I know this because I've experienced grief before, and that was wildly harrowing. Sobbing on the floor, breaking down in front of friends, feeling lost on phone calls with family, completely broken. And I was stuck in that experience of grief for about a year. And again, not acknowledging or fully processing what I was experiencing. Now, that time it was at the tail end of COVID and was already pretty isolated. And a year of that heartache and sadness and lack of inspiration to sometimes get out of bed, to move my body. And I'm someone who has a passion for movement. It is something that fuels and fires me, has done for over a decade now. And I found myself on my yoga mat just devoid of the energy and inspiration to move. I just lay there and allow myself to be consumed by the stories, the thoughts, and the emotions that looped. And the thing is, experiencing all of those emotions is valid. As human beings, we are subjected to the full spectrum of emotion. And I don't want to take that away from you or tell you that experiencing and expressing your grief is something that you shouldn't do. It would be a disservice to your humanity to express that and state that. And there is a point I found where I'd had enough, that I was continuing to circle and spiral, and I didn't want to anymore. I'd expressed and emoted, and the desire to ascend and climb out of the bottom of that pit was there, but it was a challenge to do so. And that's because I was stuck. I was stuck in limiting beliefs, limiting stories that fueled emotions that weren't supportive. And those emotions inspired actions, or in that case, inaction, of just being sedentary and horizontal. And this is because of the link between beliefs, thoughts, feelings, actions, and habits. Our subconscious beliefs, the things we hold as true in proxy, in place of truth, lived, embodied reality. This is what a belief is. A belief is a proxy, a placeholder for embodied truth, lived truth. It's something that we hold until we can replace it with something that we've lived. And these beliefs that we hold are where our thoughts originate from. And so if there's a belief that's being held that is misaligned with the reality you're living or the reality you're desiring, it then bubbles to the surface thoughts that are going to be unsupportive. In tantric teachings, thoughts and emotions aren't separate entities. They're opposite ends of the same spectrum, other sides of the same coins. They're inextricably linked. You can't have a thought without a feeling, or a feeling without a thought. They are intertwined. And so if you have a particular thought, it will fuel a particular emotion, and these emotions will then inspire us into action, and these actions over time develop our habits, and our habits construct, manifest our reality. And so if there is something in your life that you are not enjoying, you can trace it back to a belief that you're holding, which is manifesting it, let's say. And so if you're experiencing grief and you're wanting to alchemize it into grace, after you've, for me, I'll speak about my journey. First was this this element of denial. So needing to first acknowledge that what happened happened, and finding the desire to sit with it rather than push it away. And that can be challenging because, well, to accept, well, to not deny, to embrace, necessarily means to face what can be uncomfortable, what can be undesirable, and that can be painful. And so having the tools to be able to manage that, to manage the emotions that come with that, can be very empowering and valuable. And for me, what I reached for, not just my movement practice, which I love, but tantric teachings, so classical tantric, non-dual Shaiva tantra, which is understanding the nature of reality. I kind of like to think of it as kind of like the original crowdsourcing AI. It's taking centuries of embodied, lived human experience and condensing it into truth. You know, what is observable. It's an observable practice and path. It's one of embodiment, not of denial. And mantra has been a big part of that for me. Mantra are, I'll tell you, what are mantra? So mantra comes from two Sanskrit roots. Man, meaning to think, reflect, and tra, meaning to protect and liberate. So mantra is that which protects the mind, a sound form that liberates through contemplation. So mantra are sound forms that point to the thing that they vibrate at the frequency of. And so this is different to modern language, which doesn't vibrate in the essence of the thing that it points towards. It's possible to express something in words but not vibrate at the frequency of it emotionally or somatically. And this is the amazing technology of the Sanskrit language, is that in expressing it, it brings that thing into being. Everything being vibration and energy, Shakti, and just in different permutations and expressions of. And everything being consciousness, this one divine expression of reality. Call it God, call it whatever, universe, whatever label you want to ascribe to it. It's this idea of consciousness. And within the field of consciousness is this infinite potential. And the slower that consciousness vibrates, the more dense it becomes until it becomes manifest, tangible reality. And this is why, if you're experiencing grief and you're not processing it, that energy can become stuck in the body. They're something called nadis, which are energetic channels in the body. And when things are undigested or left undigested, they solidify and get stuck in the body and become dis-ease, create dis-ease. And this is the necessity of processing, integration, digesting, it's called in tantric teaching. We all have these samskaras, these energetic scars that we carry, and by massaging them out, by smoothing them over, energy, life gets to flow through us without getting stuck. And an example of this is you can date someone who has a particular car, and if you break up with them, every time you see that particular car, it reminds you of them. because that energy is getting stuck in the body. Before, you could have seen the car and not even acknowledged it and crossed it 10 times a day and it not had an effect, but because of the scar that you're carrying, it subsequently does. And that's the necessity of being able to digest these things so that they no longer create disharmony for us. And so grief. It's tough. It's really, really tough. It can be to carry the pain of loss. And there's a quote I love, which is, "What is grief if not love persevering?" And this second journey through grief has really encapsulated that for me. The loss of a child, essentially. Rather than getting stuck in what wasn't, getting to live the life that I hadn't even contemplated previously. And what a gift that gets to be. And so that's why I'm endeavoring to support people in their grief. And if you or someone you know is struggling with grief, then I have this guide, this story that I've created, this character that I've manifested, Prem being a derivation of a Sanskrit word for love, and how when we connect to love we can alchemize anything. Love being the union of masculine and feminine, Shiva and Shakti, the intertwining of the two where presence meets play, and enjoyment can be found. So what do I have for you other than an invitation to check out the book? I would love to read, actually it's today's story, which is not in the book, but it is a continuation of. And it's entitled "The Ember That Didn't Die." The mantra for this chapter is Dhyana Agni, which means focus and fire. Here we go. Dear adventurer, once upon a time, Prem found himself wandering in the ashlands. Everything around him looked grey, and inside him, more of the same. He had tried. He had hoped. And still, it hadn't worked out. His dreams felt like burnt offerings. And so he wandered, numb, sad, secretly angry. He came upon a charred tree stump, still warm, and next to it, an old man tending a tiny fire in a metal bowl. The man looked up and said, "Come, sit. You look like someone who's lost their fire." Prem sighed and dropped to the ground. I gave it everything I had, and still I failed. The man nodded. No such thing. You didn't fail. You fired the clay. You hardened the vessel. Prem frowned. The man continued, the grief you carry is not just pain. It's heat. And heat is the sacred when focused. He handed Prem a stick. Stir the embers. Focus. As Prem stirred, something shifted. The ashes weren't dead. They were covering coals, still warm, still alive. And beneath them, a new fire waiting. Focus. Fire, the man whispered. Dhyana, Agni. Use what burned you to light the way. Prem stayed the night, not to mourn, but to build. And by morning, the ashlands were no longer bleak, they were glowing. Dhyana Agni, focus, fire. If you want to hear more about Prem, I'm going to be sharing more each video, each short. And if you would love the integration guide for alchemizing grief into gratitude and glory, then I can leave a link for that. You're more than welcome to reach out. As part of what I'm wanting to share now with the world, it's grief alchemy sessions, particularly for women who have gone through the loss of a pregnancy. I have experienced firsthand how challenging that is. And if I can use my tools as a conversational hypnotherapist and I was going to say scholar. I'm not a scholar though. I would say an avid learner of classical tantric teachings, and the combination of the two for alchemizing. I like to think of it as massaging the mind. Like how we get knots in the body, we can get knots in the mind, and getting the opportunity to massage those out and unpick any limiting beliefs, stories that aren't in alignment with reality, then it smooths the path for alchemy and realigning with life to live in harmonic resonance. So I look forward to speaking to you more. Thank you for tuning in, and Om Shanti.